am moving a little bit slowly and a little bit gingerly this morning. I had a migraine yesterday, and so our class today is going to focus on kind of releasing tension from past pain. So if you deal with any kind of significant pain on a regular basis, really kind of any kind, this practice is for you. So we're going to grab a couple of blocks and our blanket and just come down to sit. So if you're like me, you may notice that when you get a migraine or when you get some kind of pain flare-up, your whole body kind of feels it, right? Like you feel it all over the place. And so today's class is going to be low and slow, down on the floor. We're going to use a couple of blocks and a blanket. And we're going to focus really on kind of releasing some of the tension in the back body. So go ahead and come to sit. And just for a moment, what I'd like you to do is take both your blocks just out in front of you, and I'm going to put mine on their middle setting. And I'm just going to stack my right shin over my left and come down onto my elbows on those blocks. And then I'm just going to start to kind of rock a little bit back and forth. So we're kind of getting in to the low back to the hips. If this is too low, you can always turn these blocks up and let them come under your elbows on their highest setting. But just kind of, you're moving your chest back and forth, left and right. And this is kind of getting into the low back, into the outer hips, those places that are usually pretty tight after a pain flare-up. And just kind of breathe into the swaying motion, breathe into the movement. And then go ahead and walk your hands back onto those blocks, and you're just going to shift the stack of your shins. So I'm going to take my left shin on top and my right shin underneath and let my elbows come down, and then just shift. And you can just breathe however you'd like to breathe. Just kind of starting to move a little bit of blood into that space. A little bit of breath. And you may want to move slowly, especially if you've been in pain like I have. You may want to just go a real kind of slow ginger pace. We're not going to do anything super active for today's practice. We're just going to kind of get in there, move some blood, and then let it settle. And then once you've done that, go ahead and take your hands back to your blocks, come back up to an easy seat. You can arrange your feet, your shins in any way you'd like. And here, see if you can get your head to go towards the sky. And maybe close or soften your gaze. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. And just kind of notice what that movement did. Do you feel... The way that I always feel after a migraine is sort of like I'm like waiting and anticipating a wave of pain. So notice if you're sort of holding on to that anticipation. And this can be applied to a lot of things in life, right? If you know that you've like gone through one experience with, say, one set of to use an example we were just talking about, if you know you've gone through a frustrating example of dealing with customer service because of a mislabeled bill, then you're probably anticipating that you're going to have to do it again. So it's sort of similar in that way, in that our bodies kind of remember that, and it's like, oh yeah, or we need to kind of pay attention to what we're bringing into the present moment, because right now, in this moment, I don't feel any pain. I'm not dealing with, mislabeled bills. I don't have to be stressed out about that sensation. So just notice if you're kind of hanging on to the residual of what, has gone before. That sort of stickiness, that residue. And once you've taken a couple of breaths here, just go ahead and open your eyes. And we're going to start out in my favorite way. We're just gonna come into a 90-90 sit, or you can come into a little bit of a more of a closed sit. And for me, I'm gonna be a little bit more closed. So my right knee is gonna come out in front. My left shin is gonna come out to my side. I'm gonna take my right hand over to the right side of the mat. And here, because what's happened as a result of my migraine, my low back is sore. So I'm just gonna start to kind of mobilize it. I'm gonna take my left hand to my left hip and just start to kind of very slowly rock it around. So tipping that hip forward and then letting it sink down and tip back. Just starting to get a little bit of twisting into the body. A little bit of movement. And like for me, I'm going to go slow. Mostly because the quick movement right now is kind of still making me a little nauseous. So we're not going to move fast. If you want to move fast, feel free. For me, I'm going to meet myself where I am. We're not going to push it today. And maybe you can slow down your breath. So as you rock your hip back, you're going to inhale, and as you rock your hip forward, you're going to exhale and twist. Maybe things will kind of loosen up. Maybe things will crack or pop. You may notice like sore spots come up that you're like, oh wow, didn't realize I was sore there too. And then go ahead and take your hands to your rib cage. You're just going to kind of work those ribs right around. Same kind of cadence, same kind of breath work. So breathing out on the twist. And I just got a nice like pop, which is really great. You may or may not get that sensation. And then take your fingertips up to your shoulder, and you're going to gaze back over your left shoulder, and then slowly reach around and reach the hand forward. So just drawing back and drawing forward. And if you're watching me, you can tell that I'm moving slowly. I'm a little tender today. Yesterday's migraine kind of crept up on me, and I didn't get ahead of it with my medicine, and so I was kind of out most of the day. And you know, when you're out most of the day, you're sleeping in like one position, so your body is like a little creaky. And we'll do one more of those. And then take that left hand down next to the right, and I'm actually going to use my blocks today. I'm going to put them on their lowest setting and just come down to my elbows. So if the floor is attainable to you today, go for the floor. But if it's not, if you're feeling like me, just go for those elbows on the blocks. And then I'm just going to shift my chest forward and back, kind of just a little bit of forward back rock. We'll hang out in some of these postures a little bit longer. They're going to be a little bit more supportive. Just to kind of let that stickiness, that residue, just kind of soften up. And then once you're ready, take your hands to your blocks. Go ahead and start to lift your chest up and out, and keep that twist for a moment. Just kind of letting the chest lift, twisting towards the right side of the mat. And then go ahead and exhale, and we're just going to pick up that left foot, cross it over your right shin, over your right knee, and let that left hip come down to sit. So you're in this sort of Lord of the Fishes position, this cross-legged position with the left knee pointing towards the sky. And you're just going to take your right hand and twist back towards the left. Take your right hand to your left knee. Pull that left knee in towards your belly. Twist across the midline. And then go ahead and release and come back to center. And if you'd like, just migrate your blocks over to the other end of your mat. We'll use those in a second. But we're going to come into that sort of closed 90-90 sit with the left leg in front. So however you'd like to get into that shape, left shin comes to or toward parallel with the side of your mat, right knee bends, and the right foot goes back towards your right hip. And then we're going to just take our left hand off to the side. I'm actually kind of scooched down. And we're going to start that movement, that twisting. Let those hips come around. Hand is on the hip. So you guys are getting a nice kind of inside view to what a normal morning practice looks like for me, at least after a migraine episode. This is, something I do in my own life. Like, I'm not just doing this for you. I always joke that, yoga teachers are selfish and we teach what we're feeling, and I'm not going to lie, today that is happening. Go ahead and take your hand up to your rib cage and start to twist. And again, I have to remember to slow down a little bit. I'm just oh yeah, don't move so fast. You're getting dizzy. So, if you're having that kind of experience, just take your time. There's no rush. There's no place to kind of race off to right now. What's nice about this is that it's sort of you've carved out this time, right? Your time is maybe protected on your calendar. Maybe your partner, your spouse is oh, I know this is the time that you do your yoga, you take your class, you do a practice, and being able to kind of protect that time and carve out that time is really nice, especially if you've been dealing with a lot lately, whether it's physical pain, whether it's, the pain of just dealing with life in general. Go ahead and take that right hand to the right shoulder, and you're just going to reach that right hand out and then back. I've got a lot of clicking and kind of popping going on in my body at the moment. And if you find a place like me where you're just I'm just gonna stay right here for a moment and stretch, do that. This is, like I said, this is a little glimpse into my own practice. And my own practice is kind of boring, which I kind of like. You're gonna take both hands down over towards the left side of the mat, and if you'd like, you can walk those blocks that are on their lowest setting back underneath your hands. Take a moment here just to press down into those blocks. And then exhale, and you can drop down to your elbows. And once you get down to your elbows, you can just start to kind of rock the body forward and back. Just let the heart kind of move forward and back in between your elbows. And let that outside edge of your hip get kind of a little massage down on the floor. And then from here, go ahead, walk your hands back onto those blocks, press down, take a nice twist, lift your heart. And then go ahead and come back to center. You're going to pick up that right leg, cross it over your left so that right foot comes to plant on the mat. The right knee goes towards the sky. And then you're just going to twist towards that right knee. Maybe gaze back over your shoulder. Twists are really good for kind of moving stuck energy, moving any kind of stagnant stuff that's going on. They're also really kind of nice in that form to kind of just flush the body, get stuff going through. So I'm a really big fan of those. And go ahead and unwind. And then what I'd like you to do is you can just kind of push those blocks out of the way. We're going to come back to kind of lean back on our hands, so knees point towards the sky. And like I said, my low back, my hips are really feeling it this morning. We're going to work up into the shoulders and back and neck, but I'm going to start with the hips. So let's start by picking up our right foot and crossing it over our left thigh. And then what you're going to do is just kind of roll the hips left and right. So you'll feel more sensation as you roll over to the right, where your knee will drop more towards the earth. And if you find a place that's kind of like sore or sensitive, this is a really nice place to kind of like work into a hip, an outer hip. For me, this actually is kind of similar to foam rolling in a way without the foam roller. It's less intense, and it gets into the spaces in the outer hips for me that are pretty sensitive. So for me, you'll notice that I'm just kind of like hanging out on that right side and rocking kind of small rocks back and forth. That's because this is where I'm feeling some tension. If that's not your case, just kind of rock back and forth. You're doing a little windshield wiper figure 4. This is nice on sort of IT bands, outer hips, outer glutes. And if you need to, kind of draw that right knee in more towards your chest, that's totally okay. I have mine kind of flopped out. You're just going to breathe into it. Today's practice isn't going to be super philosophical. It's not going to be a, mind-altering experience. This is more about altering the state of our bodies. Then go ahead and come back to center. And you're going to plant that right foot down, pick up that left, cross it over your right knee, and then drop that left knee down towards the floor and just start to do that same kind of movement. So if you find a place where you're like, oh yeah, that feels good, or like I feel sensation there, just kind of start to work into that space. And you can do circles, you can do a rock. I'm actually on this side kind of liking this idea of circles. And again, this is like what my morning wake up practice is like. It's like slow, kind of intuitive, working into like what feels good, what I feel like I need after a night of sleep, or what I feel like I need to sort of face my day. I do try to practice every day, but like I said, my practice is incredibly kind of boring. It's not something new every day, which is okay. Sometimes there's a lot of like subtlety to be found in doing the same kind of movements. And then go ahead and come back to center. You can uncross that left leg. And if you'd like, come around onto your knees. I'm gonna pad my knees here with my blanket. I have to unfold it a little bit because I actually didn't really do a very good job of cleaning up after my last class. And so my blanket and things are all confused. And once you come around onto your knees, once you've found sort of a comfortable place to kneel, I'm gonna take my blocks on their highest setting out in front of me, take my knees wide, my big toes touch, and I'm gonna get my hands on top of those blocks. And then once I have my hands on top of those blocks, I'm gonna straighten my elbows and press down. And here, with my hands kind of nice and stable on those blocks, I'm going to start to walk my chest forward. Maybe those blocks are going to come to my forearms, maybe a little closer to my elbows, and let my forehead drop towards the earth. So kind of letting a stretch happen across the front of the chest. My arms are turned so that the palms are facing one another. I'm not turning my hands down. I'm not turning them any other direction, but it just feels good to turn the palms towards one another. And if you want to kind of release the wrists, let them kind of dangle, that's great too. Take a couple of breaths. And where I feel this is really right into the back upper part of my shoulders, back of my neck. I'm just going to breathe into that space. And then go ahead and just lift your head up off the mat. Take your hands back down. Kind of sit back for a second. And what I'd like you to do is take one of your blocks and place it kind of on a lowest setting. And it's going to be right, like if you were to come up to all fours, it'll be kind of right underneath your chest. But what we're going to do is actually we're going to use this block as a pillow for a child's pose with a twist. So go ahead and come back down into your wide-legged child's pose. And you may need to kind of like do a little fussing. So toes are together, knees are apart, and I'm pressing my hips back. I haven't lowered my head down to the mat. I'm going to walk my right hand in towards the middle of the mat, kind of below the block. I'm going to reach my left arm up, take a little twist. You can tell I'm stiff. And then exhale. And I'm going to thread that left arm underneath the right. And I'm going to use that block to just kind of support the side of my head. And I'm going to press down with my right hand and twist a little deeper. Let that left shoulder kind of drop. And then release that pressure and just let my right arm drop back down to the mat. So stretching into the back of the left shoulder. I feel it in my hips. I feel my left hip kind of opening up a little bit more. Just kind of breathe into it. Just kind of settle in. And then go ahead and come back through center. Press down. Lift your heart. Maybe do a little cat-cow here. So my hands are on the ground and I'm just going to kind of wave through my spine. Where I really feel a lot of the stiffness is like in the back of my shoulders, in the back of my hips. So I'm kind of being real gentle and being real slow with like how I'm kind of moving. And if you need to do that yourself, then make sure you take care of yourself. Take your left hand down in front of your chest, in front of your face. You're going to sweep that right arm up. And again, you can see with my sort of limited movement, I just don't have a lot of twist here. Totally okay. And then exhale, you're going to thread that right arm underneath. Let that right side of the head come down to the block. Maybe press down into that left hand, twist a little bit deeper. And then release that pressure and just sort of let the back of the right arm rest. And just take a few breaths here. And then go ahead and on your next exhale, go ahead and come back to center. And we're going to move that block out of the way. But we're going to keep the blanket where it is. And you can just kind of shift your hips over to the left or right. I'm actually going to flatten out my blanket a little bit here because I'm going to use it as padding underneath my pelvis. I'm going to come down onto my belly. So however you'd like to get down onto your belly, feel free. I'm, like I said, moving real slow. Take your feet wide and take your elbows underneath your shoulders. Palms for me are going to be face down. And I'm just going to start to kind of rock my chest left and right. So a lot of this is a really slow, kind of subtle body practice. It's a lot of quiet movement. There's not a lot of big movement. And this, a lot of times, can be an opportunity to kind of go inside. Notice what is coming up. Notice, again, like as we move, for me in particular, when I've had a pain flare up, when I've had a pain episode, I find that I'm a lot more sensitive to all kinds of other pain, whether that's, my knee hurts, my shoulder hurts, whatever. So trying to retrain my body to not hold, to not be like stressed out about the pain that may be coming, that we don't know is coming. It's just like, it's still in this sort of state of lockdown almost, where you're just like, oh God, oh God, oh God. And a lot of times when we experience a stressful event, it's kind of the hangover, right? The almost post-stress, post-trauma experience, right? Not that, a migraine is traumatic. It can be, but, there's things in our lives that can be traumatic, that can be like, we just hold on to, right? But by kind of coming to our mats and being gentle with our bodies and doing a little bit of gentle movement here and there and just kind of breathing into it, we can find a way to just kind of retrain our nerves to be like, okay, we don't have to be on high alert all the time. And then once you've done a little bit of that rocking, see if you can actually press your elbows down into the earth, and you're just going to drag your heart forward, just a little bit of like traction for the low back. And I'm kind of keeping my gaze down. You can lift up. This is just what's comfortable for me and sort of my head and neck situation. And as I sort of traction my low back here, I'm going to let my belly expand. I'm going to take a deep breath. And let everything kind of settle down, settle in. And then release sort of that tractioning and just stack your hands, let your elbows go wide, and lower your forehead down onto your stacked hands. If you need to make kind of adjustments to any of your blanket situation or any of your props, just feel free to. My blanket is coming in right at the base of my ribs, which actually feels pretty good. And here I'm just going to breathe. Sometimes yoga looks like there's not a lot going on. And there is nothing wrong with that. There could be a lot going on inside. The fact that we've even just come to our mats in a time when we're feeling stressed, when we're feeling sort of that pain hangover, right? That stress hangover even. Just take a couple of easy breaths here. And then all you're going to do is take your elbows back in underneath your shoulders. Maybe this time lift your head, keep your feet separated. I'm interlacing my fingers, and I'm just going to see if I can let like the front of my low ribs drop towards the mat. So a little bit bigger of a back bend, a little bit more kind of weight to it. So at the same time that I'm letting my heart lift, I'm trying to let my belly and my rib cage soften and expand. A lot of times when we get stressed out or when pain flares up, we tend to hold our breath. So opening the lungs, opening the chest, allowing the lungs to relax is really kind of a great technique to use. And then from here, go ahead and tuck your toes and start to walk your hands back underneath your shoulders, and you're just going to press yourself up and off that blanket. And if you'd like, for me, I'm just going to move the blanket out of the way because we are going to come right back down. Only this time we're going to come down. I'm going to come down onto my left side. So however you'd like to get down onto your left side, feel free to get down onto that side. And once you get down to your left side, what I'd like you to do is go ahead and walk your left elbow out, support your head, and come down And again, it's so funny. Like, I'm generally, pretty mobile, pretty athletic, but today I'm just like very, very, very tender is the best way to describe it. I'm going to take that blanket. I'm going to stack it between my knees. And as I let my head kind of rest in the cradle of my hand, once again, I'm thinking about letting that rib cage drop down. I'm letting that rib cage soften. Letting that left lung kind of connect to the earth and soften. And while you're here, I'm staring at my block. I know that I have another block kind of behind me. Just kind of adjust that block so that it's on its lowest setting and it's kind of right behind your shoulder blades, because we are going to come into a reclined twist here. And that's going to be a nice little support. If you don't feel like you need the support of the block behind your shoulder blades, don't worry about it. But take a few breaths, let those ribs soften, let those ribs kind of sink down. And then from here, just bend your knees a little bit more so that your knees come in line with your pelvis. And you're going to just start to kind of let that right shoulder dip back towards that block. Now, you may have to make some adjustments. I have to kind of adjust mine so that it's a little bit higher. And I'm going to let the back of my right shoulder blade come down onto that block. I'm taking my right hand behind my head. And it's not a very big twist. If this doesn't feel like it's doing anything, or if you're like, I really need a little bit more, you can always slide the block that's under your right shoulder blade out from underneath. And I'm just letting the back of my head kind of come to the earth. My hands are interlaced behind my head. My right arm is dropping open. My elbows are wide. Just kind of keeping my gaze towards the ceiling. And as I breathe, I'm feeling sort of the breath move up underneath the front of my rib cage. So the pressure from the block is sort of pushing that breath forward, which I kind of like. And I'm going to actually go ahead and adjust so that I'm moving that block out from behind me for right now, and just see what it feels like. Experiment what it feels like to come back and come into a deeper twist here. Your right hip may hike back. It's okay. Let the right side of your rib cage kind of soften and open. Notice what it feels like to sort of feel the stretch from the tip of your right elbow down to the outside edge of your right hip. You may want to close your eyes, you may want to yawn, you may want to stretch. Do what you feel your body needs right now. You know, a lot of times we think about like a restorative practice being kind of at the end of the day, but sometimes it's kind of nice to have it in the morning when we can slow things down, especially after dealing with a lot of busyness or a lot of stress or a lot of, in my case, pain. Just kind of easing our way into the day, right? And then on your exhale, go ahead and roll over to your left side. And all you're going to do is, if you're in a room that you're not going to be facing a wall, you're just going to roll over to your opposite side. For me, I'm actually going to sit up and shift sides. So I'm going to come down onto my right side. And again, just make sure that you have that one of those blocks close, kind of behind you on its lowest setting, so that it'll come right to like the back of your shoulder blade when you come down, if you decide to use the block at all. So adjust your blanket between your knees, and the first stage is just kind of coming down onto the side. opening up that right rib cage. And, it's funny, like even the sides of my rib cage, like I mentioned my back, my shoulders and stuff were pretty sore, but even like the sides of my rib cage feel like they were like real bound up, like I'm holding my breath, right? Like my lungs are working real hard. I'm just like, this is a thing. Even though the lungs weren't working hard, I was sleeping most of the day. And here, if you like, for me, I'm feeling a little tender on this side. So I'm just going to rock my chest forward and back, let my whole torso and body kind of rock and let gravity take hold, and massage kind of the outside edge of my right side of my body. So if that feels good to you, you are more than welcome to do that. And then once you've taken a few rocks, go ahead and bend your knees so they're more kind of in a 90-degree angle. And you're going to take your hands behind your head. And if that block's in the right spot, you'll roll back. You'll feel it kind of support behind the back of the shoulder blade. If you need to adjust where it is, feel free to make whatever adjustments you might need. I'm actually going to tuck mine a little closer. It takes a little fidgeting, but you'll get there. And then let that left elbow drop. I have my hands behind my head again, kind of just letting that left side open up. It's awfully nice to practice in this room in the morning because we're lucky enough that this rental has a swimming pool. Now, we haven't really been able to use it for the last year and a half because there was a fire next door and there's been construction for the last year and a half. So, but it reflects the light in the morning, the sunlight up on the ceiling, and it's just lovely. So, even if we can't really use it, it makes for a really nice ambiance in this room. Take a couple of breaths, and if you're like, I'm tired of that block, you can just kind of scooch it out of your way. Maybe lift up from the left armpit so that you open up that left side once again. And just let gravity kind of take hold. Take a couple of breaths. And then once you've taken a couple breaths, once you've stretched or sighed or whatever, swallowed, whatever kind of autonomic nervous system feeling is coming up for you, go ahead and just roll back onto your right side. And if you'd like, you can just shift yourself around so that you come to lie on your back. I'm going to actually do a little pranayama fold, so if you'd like to join me, you're more than welcome to come and sit up. And what we'll do is we'll fold our blanket into thirds and then fold it in half once more. And you're just going to fold one end down so that you have a nice little pillow. And I am going to actually turn my head towards the opposite direction. And this fold is going to go right down the middle of the mat. I'll turn my back and kind of scooch my hips down and then lay back. It may take a little fiddling or futzing, but the idea is to let that blanket be a little bit of a second spine for you, and that little fold that you did at the top should basically adjust so that your forehead comes slightly higher than your chin. I'm going to take my hands up overhead, let my shoulder blades wrap around. I'm keeping my knees bent just because, like I said, my hips and my low back have been talking to me this morning. And I'm just going to close my eyes. And while I'm, still tender, it hasn't, this practice hasn't gotten rid of the pain, right? I'm not all of a sudden going to go and like run a marathon. I feel a little better. I feel a little bit more at ease. I'm not anticipating the next wave of pain, if that makes sense. And I'm kind of relishing in that space where, you know, if you've dealt with something that's really stressful, or if you've dealt with something that's really painful over a long duration of time, or even a short duration of time, there may be a moment of sort of gratitude that comes in where you're like, oh wow, I don't hurt anymore. This is amazing. Like, I should be more grateful for this phase more often. Because sometimes we forget, you know, the darkness, the stress, the pain, whatever it is often a reminder of, hey, you know, look at how good you got it. So just let your body kind of settle in into whatever shape you've taken. If you're resting on this pranayama platform, or if you're just resting on the floor, take your awareness through your body and just notice the places, and this is really kind of subtle, but the places that are not uncomfortable, places that are at ease. And as you notice all of the places that are at ease, because there's, at least in my body, there's a lot more places of ease than there are of pain. Maybe as you notice them, just say a little thank you. Say a little thank you for, you know, continuing to perform the duties that I demand of you, for continuing to breathe and pump blood and digest and think and talk and all of these things, you know, all the things that our bodies do without complaint, day in and day out. You know, finding gratitude in the spaces that we don't tend to pay attention to when we're in the throes of pain or stress. We'll take a few more breaths here, just kind of wandering through the body, noticing the places that feel good. And then when you're ready, just slowly begin to wiggle your toes, maybe wiggle the ankles, maybe stretch the arms out long, stretch the legs out long if you want. I'm going to be real ginger and careful with it. Maybe take a yawn or a sigh. And then when you're ready, just roll over to whichever side feels best. Take a moment on that side. And then when you're ready, just gently roll your shoulders more towards the earth. Press down, sit up, find your easy seat, whatever shape that takes. And then once you've found your easy seat, just let your hands come down to rest on your thighs. Maybe close your eyes or soften your gaze. And notice once again if there's any difference, how you feel, what that difference feels like. And gently draw your hands to heart center, let the palms rest against one another, and bow your head towards your heart. Whether you're in pain in this moment, whether you're in stress in this moment, whether you are anticipating oncoming pain or stress, take a deep breath into that space. Thank your body, thank your mind for preparing you for what may be coming, but also release it from that. Allow it to relax a little and not anticipate the pain that may not come. Thank you so much for practicing with me today. All of the love and light in me bows to and honors all of the love and light in each one of you. May you enjoy the rest of your day.